Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 in the morning, and suddenly you're wondering about the most random Family Guy trivia that exists. Well, you've come to the right place, because tonight we're diving deep into the weirdest, most fascinating, and downright bizarre facts about everyone's favorite dysfunctional animated family, from secret voice actor connections to hidden Easter eggs that took fans decades to discover. These facts will blow your mind and give you plenty to think about as you drift off to sleep. Let's start with something that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about Peter Griffin's voice. Did you know that Seth MacFarlane actually based Peter's distinctive voice on a security guard he met while working at Hanna-Barbera? The guard had this thick New England accent that MacFarlane found absolutely hilarious, so he started imitating it during production meetings. What's even crazier is that this security guard had no idea he was the inspiration for one of television's most iconic cartoon characters, until years later when a coworker pointed it out to him. Imagine finding out that your voice became the foundation for a character watched by millions of people worldwide. Speaking of voices, here's something that might surprise you about Meg Griffin. Originally, Lacey Shaybird voiced Meg during the first season and part of the second season. But when she left to pursue other projects, Mila Kunis stepped in without anyone really noticing. The transition was so seamless that many longtime fans still don't realize there was ever a voice change. What makes this even more interesting is that Mila Kunis was initially hesitant to take the role because she felt bad about replacing another actress. Little did she know, she'd be voicing Meg for over 2 decades. Now let's talk about Stewie Griffin's accent, because there's a fascinating story behind that sophisticated British tone. Seth MacFarlane has revealed that Stewie's voice is actually inspired by Rex Harrison, the actor who played Professor Henry Higgins in the musical My Fair Lady. But here's the twist that most people don't know. MacFarlane originally wanted Stewie to gradually lose his accent as he got older, showing his American upbringing taking over. However, fans loved the accent so much that the creators decided to keep it permanently. This means Stewie's voice was supposed to be a temporary character trait that ended up becoming his most defining feature. Brian Griffin's character has one of the most unusual origin stories in animated television. Originally, Brian was going to be just a regular dog who couldn't talk. Seth MacFarlane only gave him the ability to speak because he needed a character who could serve as the voice of reason in the Griffin household. But here's what's really wild. Brian's personality is largely based on MacFarlane's own political views and personal struggles with alcoholism. In many ways, Brian serves as MacFarlane's animated alter ego, which explains why the character often breaks the fourth wall and seems more aware of the show's absurdity than other characters. The Griffin family's house has appeared in other Seth MacFarlane shows, but not in the way you might expect. The layout and design of the Griffin home was actually recycled and modified for use in American Dad as the Smith family residence. If you look closely at both houses, you'll notice they share remarkably similar floor plans, just with different decorations and color schemes. This was done to save time and money during production, but it created an unintentional connection between the two shows that eagle-eyed fans discovered years later. Cleveland Brown's spin-off show, The Cleveland Show, was originally supposed to be much darker in tone. The initial concept had Cleveland dealing with serious issues like racism, economic struggles, and family dysfunction in a more realistic way. However, Fox executives pushed for a lighter approach that would better match Family Guy's comedic style. This decision ultimately led to the show's cancellation after 4 seasons, as it never quite found its own identity separate from its parent series. Here's a fact that'll make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. Every single background character in Quahog has a name and backstory, even if they only appear for a few seconds. The writers maintain detailed files on hundreds of minor characters, including their occupations, family relationships, and personality traits. This level of world building is incredibly rare in animated comedies and helps explain why Quahog feels like a real town despite all its absurdities. The famous chicken fight scenes between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally planned to become a recurring gag. The first fight scene was supposed to be a one-time joke, but the animation team had so much fun creating it that they kept extending the sequence. What was originally planned as a 30-second bit became a multi-minute epic battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog. The positive fan reaction convinced the writers to bring back the chicken fights as a regular feature. Lois Griffin's piano playing isn't just for show. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois, is actually an accomplished pianist in real life. During recording sessions, she often plays the piano parts herself rather than having them added in post-production. This gives Lois's musical performances a more authentic feel and allows Borstein to better connect with the character during emotional scenes involving music. The show's timeline is intentionally confusing, and there's a specific reason for this creative choice. Seth MacFarlane wanted Family Guy to exist in a floating timeline where characters never age and current events can be referenced without dating the show. This means that episodes from 1999 and episodes from 2023 can both reference contemporary events as if they're happening simultaneously. It's a narrative technique borrowed from comic books, where characters like Batman have been fighting crime for decades without aging. Meg's unpopularity among her family and peers was originally supposed to be temporary. The writers planned to give her a character development arc where she eventually found her confidence and earned respect from others. However, the jokes about Meg being ignored and mistreated became so popular with audiences that the writers decided to make it a permanent aspect of her character. This decision has created one of the most consistent running gags in the show's history. The Family Guy writing room operates under a unique rule. Any writer can pitch a cutaway gag at any time, regardless of what's being discussed. This policy has led to some of the show's most memorable non-sequitur moments, including random historical events, celebrity parodies, and completely absurd scenarios. The writers keep a massive database of unused cutaway ideas that they can draw from whenever they need to fill time or add extra laughs to an episode. Here's something that might change how you watch the show. Many of the most quotable Peter Griffin lines were completely improvised by Seth MacFarlane during recording sessions. MacFarlane has a habit of going off script and trying different variations of lines until he finds something that makes the entire recording booth laugh. These spontaneous moments often end up being the most memorable parts of episodes, proving that sometimes the best comedy comes from pure improvisation. The character of Joe Swanson was created specifically to challenge stereotypes about people with disabilities. Rather than being defined by his wheelchair, Joe is portrayed as incredibly capable, often more physically impressive than his able-bodied friends. His character was inspired by real police officers and military veterans who continued serving their communities despite physical challenges. Writers worked closely with disability advocacy groups to ensure Joe's portrayal remains respectful and empowering. Family Guy holds a unique record in television history. It's the only show to be canceled twice by the same network and brought back both times due to fan demand. The first cancellation happened after the second season due to low ratings, but DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim generated such a passionate fan base that Fox decided to revive it. When it was canceled again after the third season, the fan campaign was even stronger, leading to its permanent return and eventual status as one of Fox's longest-running shows. The show's animation style deliberately mimics classic cartoons from the 1960 seconds and 1970 seconds. Seth MacFarlane grew up watching shows like The Flintstones and The Jetsons, and he wanted Family Guy to have that same timeless cartoon aesthetic. This choice means that episodes from the early 2000s don't look dated compared to more recent episodes, helping the show maintain visual consistency across more than 2 decades of production. Stewie's sexual orientation has been a subject of fan speculation for years, and Seth MacFarlane has given conflicting answers about it intentionally. MacFarlane has stated that Stewie's sexuality is meant to be ambiguous and fluid, reflecting the complexity of human identity. This decision allows the character to work in various comedic contexts, without being confined to specific stereotypes or expectations. The Griffin family dog Brian was almost replaced permanently in 2013, but the decision was reversed after just 2 episodes due to overwhelming fan backlash. The writers killed off Brian and introduced a new dog named Vinny, planning to make this change permanent. However, the negative fan reaction was so intense that they quickly brought Brian back to life and wrote Vinny out of the show. This incident demonstrated just how attached audiences had become to the original characters. Here's a production secret that few fans know. Many of Family Guy's most elaborate action sequences are animated by the same team that works on major Hollywood animated films. When the show needs complex chase scenes, fight sequences, or musical numbers, they often hire freelance animators who normally work on Disney or Pixar movies. This explains why certain Family Guy sequences have surprisingly high production values compared to typical television animation. The town of Quahog is loosely based on several real New England locations, but it's primarily inspired by Cranston, Rhode Island, where Seth MacFarlane spent time during his childhood. Many of Quahog's landmarks and businesses are based on real places that MacFarlane remembered from his youth. The Drunken Clam Bar, for example, is inspired by a combination of several actual bars in the Providence area. Cleveland's voice actor Mike Henry made the unusual decision to step down from voicing the character in 2020, stating that a black character should be voiced by a black actor. This decision led to extensive recasting and rewriting to maintain character continuity while respecting the importance of authentic representation in voice acting. The transition process involved careful collaboration between Henry, the new voice actor, and the writing team to preserve Cleveland's established personality. Family Guy episodes often contain hidden references to other Seth MacFarlane projects, including American Dad and The Orville. These Easter eggs are scattered throughout episodes in the form of background details, character names, and brief visual gags. Finding all these connections has become a hobby for dedicated fans who maintain detailed databases of cross-references between MacFarlane's various shows. The show's musical numbers are often more complex than they appear on screen. Many of the songs featured in Family Guy episodes are full-length compositions that get edited down for television. Complete versions of these songs exist and are sometimes released as bonus content or special features. The writers and composers put significant effort into creating these musical sequences, often treating them as mini-musicals within the larger episode structure. Quagmire's famous giggity catchphrase was originally supposed to be used only once as a throwaway joke. Seth MacFarlane was experimenting with different ways to express the character's perverted excitement when he stumbled upon the giggity sound. The phrase became so associated with Quagmire that it's now impossible to imagine the character without it, showing how sometimes the most memorable elements of fictional characters emerge completely by accident. The Family Guy universe contains numerous characters who have appeared across multiple episodes spanning decades, creating one of the most extensive animated fictional communities on television. Background characters like the greased-up deaf guy, the evil monkey, and various Quahog residents have their own continuing storylines and character development arcs that careful viewers can track across seasons. These random facts barely scratch the surface of Family Guy's incredibly detailed fictional world. From voice acting secrets to animation techniques, from character development decisions to production challenges, every aspect of this show has fascinating stories behind it. As you drift off to sleep tonight, you can rest easy knowing that somewhere in Quahog, the Griffin family is probably getting into another ridiculous adventure that will entertain audiences for years to come. Sweet dreams, and remember, when life gets you down, at least you're not Meg Griffin trying to fit in at James Woods High School. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m., when suddenly you realize something terrifying. The wholesome suburban mom from Family Guy might actually be one of television's most dangerous criminals. Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, shocking, and downright unbelievable world of random Family Guy facts that'll keep your mind spinning as you drift off to sleep. Before we jump into this wild ride, let me set the stage. Family Guy has been blessing us with its chaotic humor since 1999. And over those decades, the show has accumulated more strange trivia than a conspiracy theorist's bulletin board. These aren't your typical behind-the-scenes stories about voice actors or animation techniques. No, we're talking about facts so random and unexpected that they'll have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the Griffin family and their twisted little universe. Let's start with something that'll make you see Lois Griffin in a completely different light. Did you know that if we calculated all of Lois's criminal activities throughout the series, she'd be facing multiple life sentences? I'm not talking about minor infractions here. We're discussing murder, drug manufacturing, corruption, kidnapping, and assault charges that would make even the most hardened criminals nervous. The evolution of Lois as a character is absolutely fascinating when you think about it. In the early seasons, she was essentially a generic sitcom mom, playing the straight woman to Peter's antics. But somewhere along the way, the writers decided to transform her into something far more sinister. By the later seasons, Lois had become a full-blown criminal mastermind, hiding behind the facade of suburban motherhood. Take her casual confession to vehicular manslaughter, for instance. During a seemingly innocent family moment, Lois drops the bombshell that she once killed a jaywalker years ago. The way she mentions it so nonchalantly, like she's discussing the weather, suggests this might not even be her only victim. It makes you wonder what other dark secrets are lurking behind that perfectly styled red hair. But murder is just the tip of the iceberg. Lois has also run a methamphetamine operation that would make Walter White jealous. When the Griffin family moves to a farm and discovers an abandoned meth lab in their storm cellar, most normal people would call the police immediately. Not Lois. She sees a business opportunity and jumps in with both feet, becoming a drug queenpin alongside Peter. The fact that she rationalizes this decision by saying their family needs them to sell illegal drugs to the community shows just how twisted her moral compass has become. Speaking of twisted morals, let's talk about the time Lois went through what can only be described as the world's most inappropriate midlife crisis. After Peter makes some insensitive comments about her age at her birthday party, Lois transforms into someone you might find dancing on tables at a club at 3 in the morning. This leads to her attempting to seduce a teenage pop star, which crosses so many legal and ethical boundaries that it's hard to know where to begin. The shoplifting incident is another perfect example of how quickly Lois can spiral out of control. What starts as stealing a single ham from the grocery store escalates into a full-blown crime spree involving fine art and car parts. Her kleptomania becomes so severe that she eventually gets arrested, breaks out of jail, and turns her entire family into fugitives. All because she couldn't resist the thrill of taking something that didn't belong to her. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Lois's criminal behavior is how she treats her own children when things go wrong. When Stewie suffers a serious head injury, instead of rushing him to the hospital like any normal parent would, Lois chooses to cover it up. She and Peter create an elaborate scheme involving makeup and staged accidents to hide their negligence. The fact that she prioritizes avoiding responsibility over her child's well-being reveals a level of selfishness that's genuinely chilling. Now, let's shift gears and talk about some of the more bizarre production facts that most fans don't know. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, originally pitched Family Guy as a much darker, more satirical series. Many of the early concepts were considered too controversial, even for late-night television. Some of these rejected ideas eventually found their way into later episodes, but in modified form. The voice acting process for Family Guy is more complex than most people realize. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, often having full conversations with himself during recording sessions. The technical challenge of maintaining distinct personalities and vocal patterns for each character while switching back and forth rapidly is something that few voice actors could handle. MacFarlane has mentioned in interviews that he sometimes loses track of which character he's supposed to be voicing mid-sentence. The show's animation style, while appearing simple on the surface, actually requires an enormous amount of detail work. Each episode contains hundreds of subtle visual gags and background jokes that most viewers miss entirely. The animators deliberately hide references to other shows, movies, and pop culture phenomena in almost every frame. Some of these hidden jokes are so obscure that they're only discovered by fans years after the episodes originally aired. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how the writers handle the show's timeline. The characters never age, despite the show running for over 2 decades. This creates some fascinating continuity challenges. For example, pop culture references that were current when early episodes were written now seem dated, but the characters still react to them as if they're happening in real time. The writers have to constantly balance staying relevant with maintaining the show's internal consistency. The censorship battles that Family Guy has fought over the years could fill their own documentary series. Network executives have rejected countless jokes, storylines, and visual gags for being too offensive or controversial. What's fascinating is that some of the content that was deemed unacceptable 15 years ago would probably pass without comment today, while other material that aired without issue then would never make it to broadcast now. The shifting standards of what's considered appropriate for television have forced the writers to constantly adapt their approach. Let's talk about the show's international reception, which varies wildly from country to country. In some nations, entire episodes have been banned for content that American audiences barely notice. Certain characters have been completely removed from international versions, while other episodes have been so heavily edited that they're barely recognizable. The challenge of creating content that works across different cultural contexts while maintaining the show's irreverent spirit has led to some creative solutions and some spectacular failures. The merchandise empire surrounding Family Guy is absolutely massive, but some of the products that have been created are genuinely bizarre. There have been Family Guy energy drinks, pet accessories, and even home security systems. The strangest might be the Family Guy branded medical supplies, which seems like an odd choice given the show's generally unhealthy lifestyle choices and medical mishaps. The fact that someone thought a thermometer featuring Peter Griffin was a marketable idea says something about our society that I'm not sure I want to examine too closely. Speaking of merchandise, the show's impact on internet culture cannot be overstated. Family Guy clips and memes have become a fundamental part of online humor, often taken completely out of context and used in ways the original creators never intended. Some jokes that weren't particularly funny in their original episodes have become comedy gold when isolated and shared online. The show has essentially become a meme generator, producing content that takes on a life of its own in the digital world. The guest star roster for Family Guy reads like a who's who of entertainment industry legends. What's remarkable is how many A-list celebrities have been willing to appear on a show that regularly mocks celebrity culture and Hollywood excess. Some guests have even allowed the show to create entire episodes built around making fun of their public personas. The fact that these stars are willing to be the butt of the joke shows either remarkable good humor or excellent agents who understand the value of staying relevant. But let's get back to the truly weird stuff. Did you know that the show has featured several episodes that were never supposed to air? These lost episodes contain content so strange or controversial that network executives decided they crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. Some of these episodes have leaked online over the years, while others remain locked away in the Fox vault, possibly never to see the light of day. The existence of this hidden Family Guy content has spawned entire online communities dedicated to tracking down and sharing these forbidden episodes. The show's approach to historical events is particularly interesting. Family Guy has tackled everything from the Kennedy assassination to 9/11, often in ways that push the boundaries of good taste. What's fascinating is how the show uses humor to comment on serious subjects, while simultaneously acknowledging that some things probably shouldn't be joked about. This creates a strange tension, where the show is both deeply irreverent and oddly respectful at the same time. The technical aspects of producing Family Guy have evolved dramatically over the show's run. Early episodes were animated using traditional cell animation techniques, while later seasons rely heavily on computer-generated imagery. This transition has allowed for more complex visual effects and smoother animation, but it's also changed the fundamental look and feel of the show in subtle ways that longtime fans notice immediately. One of the most bizarre aspects of Family Guy lore involves the show's relationship with its own cancellation. The series was actually canceled twice by Fox, only to be brought back due to popular demand and strong DVD sales. This cancellation and resurrection cycle has become part of the show's mythology, with episodes regularly making jokes about their own temporary death. Few television series have turned their own mortality into a running gag quite so effectively. The scientific accuracy, or complete lack thereof, in Family Guy episodes could provide material for an entire physics course on what not to do. The show regularly features characters surviving impacts that would kill normal humans, objects behaving in ways that violate basic laws of physics, and medical situations that would be impossible in reality. While this is obviously intentional comedy, the sheer volume of scientific impossibilities in each episode is actually quite impressive from a creative standpoint. As you're drifting off to sleep tonight, consider this final thought. Family Guy has been on the air for so long that there are now adults who have never lived in a world without the Griffin family. For an entire generation, the bizarre logic of Family Guy humor has been a constant background presence in their lives. The show has shaped comedy sensibilities, influenced internet culture, and created a shared cultural language that spans multiple generations. The random facts we've explored tonight barely scratch the surface of the Family Guy universe. Behind every episode lies a web of creative decisions, production challenges, and cultural commentary that reveals far more depth than the show's crude humor might suggest. Whether you love it or hate it, Family Guy has undeniably left an indelible mark on television history and popular culture. So as you close your eyes and let sleep take over, remember that somewhere in the world, animators are working on the next batch of Family Guy episodes, creating new random facts that will someday keep future generations awake at night, wondering how on earth such a bizarre and wonderful show ever came to exist. Sweet dreams, and may your subconscious be filled with the chaotic energy of the Griffin family and their endlessly entertaining dysfunction. Picture this: you're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and your brain is buzzing with the day's chaos. You need something familiar, something comforting, something that'll help you drift off into peaceful sleep. Well, tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog with some random Family Guy facts that'll ease you into dreamland. So grab your favorite pillow, get cozy, and let me tell you some fascinating tidbits about America's most dysfunctional animated family that might just surprise you. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice? The show first got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons. Fox executives thought the ratings weren't strong enough to justify keeping it alive. But here's where it gets interesting. The show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim. The DVD sales were so phenomenal that they broke records for animated series at the time. Fans were buying up seasons faster than Peter could down a beer at the Drunken Clam. This unprecedented demand from home video sales convinced Fox to bring the show back in 2005, making it one of the first series ever to be resurrected primarily due to DVD performance. The voice behind Peter Griffin, Seth MacFarlane, actually does most of his recording sessions incredibly quickly. While many voice actors take hours to perfect their performances, MacFarlane can knock out an entire episode's worth of dialogue in about 2 hours. That's pretty impressive when you consider he voices not just Peter, but also Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. His rapid recording style comes from his background in radio, where timing and efficiency were absolutely crucial. MacFarlane developed his distinctive character voices during his college years at the Rhode Island School of Design, where he actually created an early version of Family Guy as his senior thesis project. Speaking of voices, here's something that might keep you pondering as you fall asleep. Stewie's accent isn't actually British. Seth MacFarlane has explained that Stewie's voice is meant to be a sort of generic upper-class accent that could come from anywhere. It's a theatrical, affected way of speaking that's supposed to make Stewie sound sophisticated and pretentious, regardless of geographic origin. The inspiration came from old Hollywood actors and theater performers who adopted similar speech patterns to sound more refined. The character of Glenn Quagmire has one of the most disturbing backstories in animated television, though it's mostly revealed through throwaway gags and quick references. His middle name is apparently Quentin, and he's supposedly been a pilot since the 1960 seconds, which would make him significantly older than he appears. The show has hinted that he's been involved in various historical events, always in morally questionable ways. His famous catchphrase, "giggity," wasn't actually in the original character design. It evolved naturally during Seth MacFarlane's recording sessions and became so popular with the writers that they started incorporating it into more and more episodes. Here's a fact that might make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. The Griffin family's house layout is incredibly consistent throughout the series. The writers and animators keep detailed floor plans to ensure that rooms connect properly from episode to episode. This level of continuity is actually quite rare in animated sitcoms, where houses often seem to have magical expanding and contracting rooms depending on what the plot needs. The Griffin house is based on an actual home in Cranston, Rhode Island, though it's been modified significantly for animation purposes. Brian's character has evolved dramatically since the show's early days. Originally, he was written as more of a straight man to Peter's antics, serving as the voice of reason in the household. However, as the series progressed, the writers began exploring Brian's flaws more deeply. His pretentiousness, his drinking problem, his romantic failures, and his writing aspirations all became major character traits. This evolution reflects Seth MacFarlane's own growth as a writer and his willingness to make his characters more complex and sometimes less likable. The show's cultural impact extends far beyond television screens. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture in ways that few other shows can claim. The Roadhouse cutaway gag became a popular meme format years before most people even knew what memes were. The "oh no" moments, the chicken fights, and countless other Family Guy references have become part of online vernacular. This digital footprint has helped keep the show relevant with younger audiences who might discover it through social media rather than traditional television viewing. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how cutaway gags are created. The writers have a separate room where they brainstorm completely random, unrelated jokes that can be inserted into episodes when needed. These gags are often written months before they're actually used, and they're stored in a database that writers can search through when they need to fill time or add comedy to a scene. This system allows for the show's signature non-sequitur humor, while maintaining a consistent production schedule. The character of Meg has been voiced by 2 different actors, though most viewers probably never noticed the change. Lacey Chabert voiced Meg during the first season, but Mila Kunis took over starting in season 2. The transition was so seamless that it barely registered with audiences. Mila Kunis has mentioned in interviews that she initially tried to match Lacey Chabert's interpretation of the character, but eventually developed her own approach. Interestingly, Kunis was also voicing Jackie Burkhardt on That 70 Seconds show at the same time, showcasing her range as a voice actor. Family Guy's relationship with censorship has been fascinating to observe over the years. The show has pushed boundaries consistently, sometimes getting away with content that surprises even longtime viewers. However, there are also episodes that have been banned or heavily edited for various reasons. The censorship battles have actually become part of the show's identity, with Seth MacFarlane and the writers often incorporating discussions about censorship directly into episodes. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is uniquely irreverent. Unlike many animated series that treat celebrity appearances as special events, Family Guy often has famous people, voice characters, who are immediately killed off or humiliated in some way. This approach reflects the show's general irreverence towards celebrity culture and its willingness to bite the hand that feeds it. Many celebrities have appeared on the show specifically because they wanted to be made fun of, which says something interesting about the show's cultural position. Here's something that might surprise you. Family Guy has actually won several Emmy nominations and awards over the years. While it's often dismissed as lowbrow humor, the show has been recognized for its voice acting, animation, and music. Seth MacFarlane's musical numbers, in particular, have received critical acclaim. His background in musical theater shows through in episodes featuring elaborate song and dance sequences, which often rival those found in major animated films. The show's international versions are fascinating studies in cultural adaptation. Different countries have had to handle the show's content in various ways, sometimes changing jokes entirely to make them relevant to local audiences. In some cases, entire episodes have been restructured because certain references or situations don't translate across cultural boundaries. These international versions offer interesting insights into how humor travels, or doesn't travel, across different societies. Family Guy's merchandise empire is surprisingly extensive and eclectic. Beyond the typical t-shirts and action figures, there have been Family Guy board games, cookbooks, and even meditation guides. The show's merchandising success demonstrates how deeply it has penetrated popular culture. Fans don't just watch Family Guy, they incorporate it into various aspects of their lives through products that extend the show's universe into the real world. The writing process for Family Guy involves what the staff calls manatee balls, a reference to a South Park episode that made fun of Family Guy's writing style. The writers actually embraced this criticism and lean into the randomness that South Park was mocking. They've developed systems for generating increasingly absurd combinations of references, situations, and characters. This self-aware approach to their own writing style has become part of the show's meta-humor. Seth MacFarlane's other projects have often served as testing grounds for Family Guy concepts. The Orville, his science fiction series, actually uses some of the same character dynamics and humor styles that he developed for Family Guy, just in a different setting. Similarly, American Dad and The Cleveland Show served as laboratories where different aspects of the Family Guy formula could be explored and refined. The show's relationship with current events is complex and ever-evolving. Family Guy often references things that happened months before episodes air due to production schedules, but the writers have developed techniques for keeping the show feeling current. They've also mastered the art of making jokes that feel timeless, even when they're about very specific cultural moments. One aspect of Family Guy that often goes unnoticed is its sophisticated understanding of animation history. The show regularly pays homage to classic animation styles, from Disney to Warner Brothers to obscure experimental films. These references serve multiple purposes. They demonstrate the creator's deep knowledge of their medium. They provide visual variety, and they create inside jokes for animation enthusiasts. The show's impact on other animated series cannot be overstated. Family Guy's success opened doors for more adult-oriented animated programming, and influenced the humor styles of countless other shows. Its willingness to break the fourth wall, its pop culture reference density, and its approach to controversial topics have all been adopted and adapted by other animated series. As you drift off to sleep, consider this. Family Guy represents a unique moment in television history, where traditional broadcast standards, internet culture, and animation technology all converge to create something entirely new. The show emerged just as DVD sales were becoming important, just as internet memes were developing, and just as animation technology was becoming sophisticated enough to support rapid production schedules. The voice actors have developed such strong relationships with their characters that they often improvise during recording sessions. These improvisations frequently make it into the final episodes, adding spontaneity to what could otherwise be very controlled animation. The chemistry between voice actors, even when they're recording separately, comes through in the final product in ways that feel natural and unforced. Family Guy's legacy will likely be its demonstration that animated television could be both commercially successful and artistically ambitious while maintaining an irreverent, anti-establishment attitude. It proved that audiences were hungry for content that didn't talk down to them, that referenced the full spectrum of popular culture, and that wasn't afraid to offend or surprise. So as you close your eyes tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, someone is discovering Family Guy for the first time. Someone else is rewatching their favorite episode, and the creators are probably working on new ways to surprise, shock, and entertain audiences. In the grand tradition of animated comedy, Family Guy continues to push boundaries, challenge expectations, and remind us that sometimes the most comforting thing about entertainment is its complete unpredictability. Sweet dreams, and remember, tomorrow is another day in Quahog, where anything can happen, and usually does. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 in the morning, and suddenly, you remember that time Peter Griffin literally married a cardboard cutout of himself. Welcome to the weird, wild world of Family Guy, where the most random facts are often the most fascinating ones. Tonight, we're diving deep into the strangest corners of Quahog, with facts so bizarre they'll either help you drift off to sleep or keep you awake, wondering how the writers even came up with this stuff. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind. Did you know that the original concept for Family Guy was completely different from what we got? Seth MacFarlane initially pitched the show as a much darker comedy about a dysfunctional family dealing with serious issues. The network executives were so confused by the pilot that they almost didn't pick it up. Thank goodness they did, because otherwise, we wouldn't have gems like the time Brian became a used car salesman and accidentally sold Death his own car. Speaking of Brian, here's a fact that might surprise you. The character was originally supposed to be much more of a background character, basically just the family pet who occasionally made sarcastic comments. But Seth MacFarlane loved voicing him so much that Brian gradually became one of the main characters. This explains why Brian's personality seems to evolve so dramatically throughout the early seasons. He went from being a simple talking dog to a pretentious intellectual with daddy issues and a drinking problem. Now let's talk about something truly random. The chicken fight scenes between Peter and Ernie the giant chicken weren't supposed to become a recurring gag. The first fight scene in the episode Da Boom was meant to be a one-off joke. But the animators had so much fun creating the elaborate fight sequence that they kept bringing it back. Each subsequent chicken fight got more elaborate and destructive, eventually involving helicopters, submarines, and entire city blocks being demolished. The longest chicken fight lasted nearly 4 minutes of screen time, which is practically an eternity in television comedy. Here's something that'll make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. Every time you see the Griffin house, the layout is actually consistent throughout the series. The creators took the time to map out every room, every hallway, every closet in the house, so that when characters move around, it makes spatial sense. This is incredibly rare in animated comedies, where houses often have impossible layouts that change depending on what the joke requires. The Griffin House blueprints are actually available online, and fans have used them to build accurate replicas in video games and even real life. Moving on to character quirks. Did you know that Meg's unpopularity at school was originally supposed to be temporary? The writers planned to have her eventually find her place and become more confident, but the running gag of everyone treating Meg terribly became so popular with audiences that they decided to make it a permanent part of her character. Mila Kunis, who voices Meg, has said in interviews that she sometimes feels bad about all the abuse her character receives, but she understands that it's become essential to the show's dynamic. Let's dive into some voice acting trivia that's perfect for late-night pondering. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 main characters on the show, but he almost didn't voice Stewie at all. The original plan was to have Stewie voiced by a child actor, but MacFarlane was worried about the controversial things Stewie would say and didn't want to put a real child in that position. So he developed Stewie's distinctive British accent as a way to make the character's adult thoughts coming from a baby's mouth even more surreal and funny. Chris Griffin's voice is another interesting story. Seth Green, who voices Chris, has to actively make his voice higher and more nasal to sound, like a teenage boy. As Green has gotten older, it's become more challenging for him to hit those high notes, so the sound engineers often have to digitally adjust his voice in post-production. This is why Chris's voice sometimes sounds slightly different between episodes, depending on how much digital manipulation was required. Here's a fact that connects to real-world events in a weird way. The episode where Peter starts his own political party called the Tea Party Patriots was written and animated before the actual Tea Party movement became prominent in American politics. When the episode aired, many viewers thought it was a commentary on current events, but it was actually just an incredible coincidence. The writers had to add a disclaimer explaining that any similarity to real political movements was purely accidental. Now for something completely different. The Pawtucket Brewery, where Peter works, is based on a real brewery in Rhode Island. Seth MacFarlane grew up in the area and used to drive past the brewery every day. He thought it would be funny to have his lazy cartoon character work at a place that produces something that would make him even lazier. The real brewery owners were initially concerned about being associated with the show, but eventually embraced it when they realized it was bringing them tourists. Let's talk about some of the show's more obscure running gags. You know how Conway Twitty always seems to appear at random moments? This started as an inside joke among the writers who were fans of old country music. They would play Conway Twitty songs during late-night writing sessions to keep themselves awake. Eventually, they decided to work him into the show as a bizarre non sequitur that would confuse viewers and break up the pacing in unexpected ways. The Conway Twitty segments are actually some of the most expensive parts of the show to produce because they have to pay for the music rights. Here's something that'll make you look at Cleveland differently. When Cleveland got his own spin-off show, the original plan was for him to stay in Quahog, and the spin-off would focus on his adventures around town. But the writers realized that would be too limiting. So they created the elaborate storyline where his house gets destroyed and he moves to Virginia. The bathtub falling through multiple houses scene took months to animate and became one of the most memorable moments in the show's history, even though it was essentially just a setup for a spin-off that only lasted 4 seasons. Speaking of spin-offs, did you know that there was almost a Stewie and Brian road trip series? The popularity of their travel episodes convinced executives that the dynamic between the sophisticated baby and the intellectual dog could carry its own show. Scripts were written for 6 episodes before the project was scrapped due to budget concerns. Some of those unused scripts were later reworked into regular Family Guy episodes, which explains why some Stewie and Brian adventures feel more elaborate than usual. Let's get into some animation secrets that most viewers never notice. The way characters' eyes are drawn actually follows a complex mathematical formula to ensure they always look natural when the characters move their heads. This might sound boring, but it's actually fascinating when you realize that most animated shows just wing it and hope for the best. Family Guy's attention to eye movement is part of what makes the characters feel more alive and expressive than typical cartoon characters. Here's a weird fact about the show's merchandising history. The most popular Family Guy product ever sold wasn't a t-shirt or a toy. It was a cookbook called The Family Guy Cookbook that featured recipes supposedly created by each character. Peter's section was all comfort food and beer-based dishes. Lois had elegant dinner party recipes. Stewie contributed sophisticated international cuisine. And Brian's section was dinner for 15, entirely vegetarian. The cookbook actually received positive reviews from real food critics, which nobody expected. Now for some trivia about the show's cancellation and revival that goes beyond what most people know. When Family Guy was first canceled, Seth MacFarlane was actually relieved. He was exhausted from working on the show and wanted to pursue other projects. But the DVD sales were so strong and the fan campaign so persistent that Fox offered him a deal he couldn't refuse, including complete creative control and a substantial budget increase. This is why the post-cancellation episodes often feel more ambitious and experimental than the early ones. The show's relationship with censors has always been complicated. But here's something most people don't realize. Family Guy actually has one of the most cooperative relationships with network censors of any adult animated show. Seth MacFarlane learned early on that if you give censors multiple options and let them feel like they're part of the creative process, they'll often let you get away with more controversial content. The writers deliberately write jokes they know will get cut, just so they can negotiate to keep the jokes they really want. Let's talk about some character backstories that were developed but never made it into episodes. Quagmire was originally supposed to have a twin brother who was everything he wasn't, completely respectful and monogamous. This character was going to be introduced as a way to explore Quagmire's personality through contrast, but the writers decided it would be funnier to keep him as an irredeemable character without any redemptive family members to soften his edges. Joe Swanson's backstory is much more detailed than what we see on screen. The writers created an entire timeline of his police career before his accident, including the names of his partners, his most famous cases, and even his police academy graduation rank. None of this has ever been mentioned in the show, but it helps the writers keep his character consistent and gives them material to draw from when they need Joe to demonstrate police knowledge or skills. Here's something about the show's music that might surprise you. Every musical number in Family Guy is performed live by the voice actors, even when their characters are supposed to be bad singers. Seth MacFarlane, who has released several jazz albums, insisted on this approach because he believes it makes the musical moments feel more authentic. This means that when Peter sings off-key, Seth MacFarlane is actually deliberately singing badly, which is apparently much harder than just singing well. The relationship between Family Guy and The Simpsons goes deeper than their famous crossover episode. The two shows' writing staffs have been trading jokes and references for years in a friendly rivalry that most viewers never notice. If you watch carefully, you'll spot subtle Simpsons references in Family Guy episodes and vice versa. This tradition started when several Family Guy writers were hired away from The Simpsons, and they maintained friendships with their former colleagues. Now, here's a production fact that explains a lot about the show's pacing. Family Guy episodes are actually written to be about 30 minutes long, but they're edited down to fit the 22-minute television format. This means there are about 8 minutes of content cut from every episode. These deleted scenes aren't just throwaway jokes either. They often contain character development and plot details that would make the episodes feel more complete. Some of these deleted scenes have been released on DVD collections, and they often change how you interpret the episodes. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is completely different from most animated comedies. Instead of having celebrities play themselves or obvious parodies of themselves, Family Guy often casts them as completely random characters. This creates a fun game for viewers who recognize the voices but can't immediately place where they know them from. Adam West playing the mayor was the template for this approach, and it's been incredibly successful at attracting high-profile guest stars who want to try something different. Let's explore some of the show's more philosophical elements that get overlooked because of all the random humor. The relationship between Stewie and Brian is actually a sophisticated exploration of the friendship between youth and experience. Stewie represents unlimited potential and ambition, while Brian represents the reality of compromise and disappointment that comes with age. Their adventures often end with both characters learning something, but in subtle ways that don't feel preachy or forced. The show's treatment of time travel and alternate realities follows surprisingly consistent rules. The writers created an internal logic system for how these sci-fi elements work in the Family Guy universe, even though they rarely explain it to viewers. This attention to detail is why the time travel episodes feel coherent instead of just random, and it allows them to create genuine consequences for the characters' actions across multiple episodes. Here's something about the animation process that most people never consider. Each episode of Family Guy requires approximately 15,000 individual drawings. The animators have developed shortcuts and techniques to make this process more efficient, but it still takes about 8 months from the initial script to the finished episode. This explains why the show sometimes references events that seem outdated by the time the episode airs. The references were current when the episode was being written and animated. The voice recording process is also more complex than most people realize. While some animated shows record all the voices separately, Family Guy often records the main cast together in the same room. This creates more natural-sounding conversations and allows the actors to play off each other's energy. Seth MacFarlane switches between his different character voices during these sessions, which the other actors say is both impressive and slightly disturbing to witness in person. Now for some trivia about the show's impact on popular culture that goes beyond the obvious memes and catchphrases. Family Guy has been credited with popularizing the rapid-fire pop culture reference style that's now common in comedy. Before Family Guy, most TV shows would make 1 or 2 cultural references per episode. Family Guy started making dozens of references per episode, training audiences to catch quick jokes and creating a more interactive viewing experience. The show's influence on internet culture is also significant. Family Guy was one of the first TV shows to embrace online fan communities and viral marketing. The creators regularly engage with fans on social media and have incorporated fan suggestions into actual episodes. This relationship between creators and fans has become the standard for modern entertainment. But Family Guy was pioneering this approach when most TV executives were still afraid of the internet. Finally, here's a fact that brings everything full circle. Despite all the random humor and bizarre storylines, Family Guy is actually one of the most carefully planned shows on television. Every season has an overarching theme that connects the episodes, even though these themes are subtle enough that most viewers don't consciously notice them. The writers map out character development arcs that span multiple seasons, ensuring that even the most outrageous episodes contribute to larger storytelling goals. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, there are people whose full-time job is deciding exactly how long Peter Griffin's fights with a giant chicken should last. Sweet dreams. And may your nights be filled with fewer random cutaway gags than the average Family Guy episode. Have you ever wondered why Peter Griffin's laugh is so weirdly infectious, or how Family Guy predicted some of the most bizarre real-world events years before they happened? Tonight, we're diving deep into the most mind-bending facts about Family Guy that will either put you to sleep or keep you awake thinking about how insane this show really is. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through streaming services, and you land on Family Guy. Maybe you've seen every episode a dozen times, or maybe you're just discovering the chaos that is the Griffin family. Either way, there are secrets hidden in plain sight that even the most dedicated fans miss. From voice acting mysteries that will blow your mind to cultural references so obscure they require a PhD to understand, Family Guy is way more complex than anyone gives it credit for. Let's start with something that sounds completely made up but is absolutely true. Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy, was supposed to be on one of the planes that hit the World Trade Center on September 11th. He had a ticket for American Airlines Flight 11, but missed it because he was hungover and his travel agent gave him the wrong departure time. That single hangover and scheduling mix-up literally changed television history. Without that random twist of fate, we never would have gotten the Griffin family or any of Seth's other animated shows. But here's where it gets even weirder. Family Guy has this uncanny ability to predict future events that borders on supernatural. Remember the episode where Peter hurts his knee and makes that hissing sound while sucking air through his teeth? That became one of the most recognizable memes on the internet, years before memes were even called memes. The show was creating viral content before viral content existed. Speaking of predictions, Family Guy called out Kevin Spacey's behavior in a 2005 episode where Stewie runs naked through a shopping mall and someone says, "Somebody call the police." And another character responds, "I think Kevin Spacey already did. This was more than a decade before the Kevin Spacey scandal broke. How do the writers keep nailing these things?" It's like they have a crystal ball hidden in their writing room. The voice acting situation is absolutely bonkers when you really think about it. Seth MacFarlane voices Peter Griffin, Brian Griffin, Stewie Griffin, Glenn Quagmire, Tom Tucker, and Carter Pewterschmidt, among others. That means he's literally having conversations with himself for huge chunks of every episode. Imagine being in the recording booth talking to yourself as different characters for hours on end. It's like method acting taken to an extreme level. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, also voices Trisha Takanawa and several other female characters. During the early seasons, she was actually a writer on Mad TV, which explains why some of the humor has that sketch comedy feel. The woman can switch between Lois's nasally Long Island accent and Trisha's professional news anchor voice seamlessly. Voice actors don't get nearly enough credit for their range. Here's a fact that will mess with your head. The show was actually canceled twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons. But then something magical happened. Adult Swim started showing reruns, and DVD sales went through the roof. Fox realized they had made a massive mistake and brought the show back in 2005. Then they canceled it again in 2009, but fan outcry was so intense they reversed the decision within weeks. Family Guy is like a cockroach in the best possible way. It just refuses to die. The animation process is way more complicated than you might think. Each episode takes about 10 months to complete, from initial script to final animation. The overseas animation studios in South Korea handle most of the actual drawing, while the American team focuses on storyboarding and voice work. It's a global operation just to make Peter fall down the stairs in a funny way. Brian Griffin's character is loosely based on a real dog that Seth MacFarlane's family had when he was growing up. The real Brian was apparently much better behaved than his cartoon counterpart, though. He didn't drink martinis or write terrible novels or have existential crises about being a dog. The fictional Brian's pretentious intellectual personality came from Seth's observations of people he knew in college who took themselves way too seriously. The Conway Twitty cutaway gags started as an inside joke among the writers, but became this legendary running bit that fans either love or hate with no middle ground. These segments where the show just cuts to Conway Twitty performing a complete song were meant to be the most random non sequiturs possible. The fact that they kept doing it even when fans complained just made it funnier to the writers. It's comedy through pure stubbornness. Stewie Griffin's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years. Seth MacFarlane has given different answers in interviews ranging from Stewie being gay to being sexually fluid to being too young for any of it to matter. The ambiguity seems intentional. Stewie exists in this weird space where he's simultaneously a baby and this sophisticated character with adult concerns. It's like the writers are deliberately keeping us guessing. The show's relationship with censorship is fascinating. Standards and practices at Fox let certain things slide while being strict about others in ways that seem completely arbitrary. Characters can be violently injured in cartoonish ways, but heaven forbid someone says a particular word or shows too much animated skin. The writers have turned working around censorship into an art form. Cleveland's spin-off show, The Cleveland Show, ran for 4 seasons and was actually pretty decent, but never found the same audience as Family Guy. When Cleveland moved back to Quahog, it felt like a homecoming. Mike Henry, who voiced Cleveland, stepped down from the role in 2020, citing the need for black actors to voice black characters. The recasting brought Arif Zahir into the role, and honestly, the transition was seamless. The show's pop culture references are so dense you could teach entire courses on them. From obscure 1980 seconds commercials to deep cuts from classic Hollywood movies, the writers assume their audience has an encyclopedic knowledge of American media history. Some references are so specific that you need to be a certain age and from a particular region to get them. It's like they're rewarding viewers for paying attention to decades of television and movies. Peter Griffin's job at the brewery is based on real brewery operations that Seth MacFarlane researched. The Pawtucket Patriot beer is obviously a parody of Samuel Adams, but the actual brewery dynamics and workplace situations are surprisingly accurate. Peter's incompetence is exaggerated for comedy, but apparently real brewery workers have told the writers that some of their workplace storylines hit uncomfortably close to home. The show's theme song is performed by Walter Murphy, who also composed music for Saturday Night Fever. Having a disco legend write your cartoon theme song is the kind of random collaboration that only happens in Hollywood. The orchestral arrangement gives the show this grand, cinematic feel that contrasts perfectly with the chaotic family dynamics. Meg Griffin is voiced by Mila Kunis, who was just 15 years old when she started the role. She's grown up with the character in a way that's pretty unique for voice acting. Lacey Chabert voiced Meg in the first season before scheduling conflicts forced her to step down. The transition happened so smoothly that most viewers didn't even notice the change. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over 20-plus seasons. Early episodes had this rougher hand-drawn quality, while newer episodes are much more polished and computer-assisted. You can literally watch the technology advance by comparing episodes from different eras. The character designs have become more standardized, but somehow less distinctive. Family Guy's influence on internet culture is immeasurable. Before YouTube compilation videos existed, fans were trading Family Guy clips on early file-sharing networks. The show basically invented the concept of animated content going viral. Cutaway gags are perfect for social media because they're self-contained comedy bits that work without context. The writer's room must be absolute chaos. How do you pitch ideas for a show where literally anything can happen? The creative process seems to involve taking normal family situations and pushing them to the most extreme possible conclusions. It's like improv comedy, but with months of animation work required to execute each joke. Seth MacFarlane's other projects, like The Orville and his music albums, show his range beyond comedy, but Family Guy remains his most recognizable creation. The show has become this cultural touchstone that defines a particular era of animated television. Love it or hate it, you can't ignore its impact. The merchandising empire around Family Guy is surprisingly extensive. From t-shirts featuring Stewie's quotes to Peter Griffin action figures, the show has spawned countless products. The fact that people want to wear clothing featuring cartoon characters making inappropriate jokes says something profound about modern comedy consumption. Here's something that will keep you thinking as you drift off to sleep. Family Guy exists in this weird space between family sitcom and surreal comedy experiment. It's simultaneously the most normal and most bizarre show on television. The Griffin family deals with everyday problems, like paying bills and getting along with neighbors. But they also travel through time, fight giant chickens, and have musical numbers about random topics. The show's longevity is a testament to something deeper than just comedy. It's comfort food for your brain. Even when the jokes don't land, there's something familiar and reassuring about Peter's voice or Stewie's elaborate schemes. It's like spending time with dysfunctional friends who make you feel better about your own problems. As you close your eyes tonight, maybe you'll dream about cutaway gags from your own life, or imagine what it would be like to have conversations with your pet, like Brian and the Griffin family. Or maybe you'll just sleep soundly, knowing that somewhere in the world, animators are working on the next episode where Peter does something incredibly stupid and somehow everything works out fine. Sweet dreams, and remember, we all have a little bit of Griffin family chaos in our lives. The difference is, their chaos gets turned into comedy gold, while ours just makes us tired. At least now you know some random Family Guy facts that are just weird enough to either bore you to sleep or keep you awake. Wondering what other secrets are hidden in your favorite animated shows? Think you know everything about your favorite fictional families? Tonight, I'm about to shatter everything you thought you knew about the characters we grew up watching. What if I told you that beneath the laughs and heartwarming moments, these beloved family shows have been hiding some seriously dark psychological truths? Get ready, because we're diving deep into the twisted minds of television's most iconic families, and trust me, you'll never look at them the same way again. Welcome back to another mind-bending exploration, where we peel back the layers of pop culture to reveal the uncomfortable realities lurking beneath the surface. I'm your host, and today we're embarking on a journey that will fundamentally change how you view family dynamics on screen. We're not just talking about quirky character traits or funny running gags here. We're exposing genuine psychological disorders, toxic behaviors, and dysfunctional patterns that would make any therapist's notebook overflow with red flags. Have you ever wondered why certain family sitcoms feel so uncomfortably familiar? Why we laugh at situations that, in real life, would have us calling social services? That's because these shows, intentionally or not, mirror the darkest aspects of human psychology wrapped in a comedic package. Tonight, we are unwrapping that package and examining what's really inside. Let's start with something that might shock you about animated families. You know those characters we quote daily and consider harmless entertainment? Well, they're actually perfect case studies for some of the most destructive personality traits known to psychology. Take the concept of narcissistic behavior patterns, for instance. We see characters who consistently put their own desires above family welfare, manipulate situations to benefit themselves, and show zero empathy for others' suffering. Consider how often we witness parents in these shows making decisions that directly harm their children's emotional development. They dismiss their kids' feelings, mock their aspirations, and create environments where psychological safety doesn't exist. Yet we laugh because it's presented as comedy. The truth is, if these behaviors occurred in real families, we'd recognize them as forms of emotional abuse. But the darkness goes deeper than individual character flaws. These shows often normalize dysfunction by presenting it as typical family life. Children viewers internalize these relationship patterns as normal, potentially carrying these toxic blueprints into their own future families. It's a cycle that perpetuates unhealthy dynamics across generations, all disguised as entertainment. Let's examine the phenomenon of scapegoating within fictional families. There's almost always that one family member who bears the brunt of everyone else's dysfunction. They become the emotional dumping ground, the target of ridicule, and the convenient explanation for all family problems. This character serves as the family's pressure valve, allowing other members to avoid confronting their own issues by projecting everything onto this unfortunate soul. What's particularly disturbing is how these scapegoated characters are often portrayed as deserving their treatment. The show's narrative subtly suggests that their suffering is justified, teaching audiences that certain people are acceptable targets for cruelty. This psychological manipulation is incredibly sophisticated and deeply harmful, especially when absorbed by impressionable viewers. Moving on to another dark pattern, we see frequent examples of emotional manipulation disguised as parental love. Characters use guilt, shame, and conditional affection to control family members' behavior. They withdraw love as punishment and offer it as reward, creating anxious attachment patterns that would haunt real children for life. The scary part is how these manipulation tactics are often presented as caring parental behavior. Financial dynamics in these fictional families also reveal disturbing truths about power and control. Money becomes a weapon used to maintain dominance hierarchies within the family unit. Characters leverage financial dependency to strip away others' autonomy, creating situations where family members must choose between self-respect and survival. This economic abuse rarely gets labeled as such within the show's context, but it's a form of domestic violence nonetheless. Then there's the normalization of substance abuse as a coping mechanism for family stress. Characters regularly turn to alcohol or other substances to deal with their dysfunctional relationships, and this behavior is consistently portrayed as acceptable or even admirable. The message sent is that chemical numbing is preferable to addressing underlying problems, a philosophy that has destroyed countless real families. The violence, both physical and emotional, that permeates these shows is staggering when you really analyze it. Characters assault each other, destroy property in fits of rage, and engage in psychological warfare that would traumatize actual family members. Yet because it's animated or comedic, we're conditioned to view this violence as harmless fun rather than recognizing it as abusive behavior that mirrors real-world domestic violence patterns. What about the complete absence of healthy conflict resolution in these families? Disagreements escalate to explosive confrontations. Problems get swept under the rug rather than addressed, and family members hold grudges that span entire seasons. There's never any genuine communication, compromise, or emotional growth. Instead, conflicts either explode into chaos or get ignored until they fester into something worse. The gender dynamics in these shows often perpetuate harmful stereotypes that reinforce toxic relationship patterns. Male characters are frequently portrayed as bumbling, emotionally unavailable, and incapable of basic actions. Adulting skills. Female characters often become long-suffering martyrs who enable bad behavior while sacrificing their own needs. These portrayals normalize codependency and emotional labor imbalances that plague real relationships. Let's talk about the children in these fictional families, because their treatment is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. They're often parentified, forced to take on adult responsibilities while their actual parents remain childlike. They become emotional caretakers for dysfunctional adults, a role reversal that stunts their development and robs them of childhood innocence. The shows present this as maturity or responsibility, but it's actually a form of childhood emotional abuse. The sibling dynamics portrayed are equally problematic, characterized by intense competition, jealousy, and cruelty. Siblings are pitted against each other for parental attention and approval, creating lifelong rivalries rather than supportive bonds. The message conveyed is that family members are competitors rather than allies, fostering an environment where trust and cooperation become impossible. Privacy and personal boundaries are consistently violated in these fictional families. Characters rifle through each other's belongings, eavesdrop on private conversations, and invade personal space without consequence. This normalized boundary violation teaches viewers that family members don't deserve privacy or respect, setting up expectations that healthy relationships cannot meet. The way mental health issues are handled in these shows is particularly troubling. Characters displaying clear signs of depression, anxiety, or other psychological conditions are mocked rather than supported. Their struggles become punchlines, rather than opportunities for compassion and understanding. This portrayal stigmatizes mental health challenges and discourages seeking help. Perhaps most disturbing is how these shows handle consequences for toxic behavior. Characters rarely face meaningful repercussions for their harmful actions. They might receive temporary comeuppance, but by the next episode, they're back to their destructive patterns without any real change or growth. This lack of consequences suggests that toxic behavior is acceptable as long as you're family. The enablement that occurs within these family systems is staggering. Instead of holding destructive family members accountable, other characters make excuses, cover up problems, and adapt their own behavior to accommodate dysfunction. This teaches viewers that enabling is loving, and that challenging toxic behavior is disloyal, perspectives that trap people in abusive relationships. Financial irresponsibility is often glorified in these shows, with characters making impulsive decisions that endanger their family's security. Yet there are rarely long-term consequences for these choices, sending the message that financial stability is unimportant and that someone else will always clean up the mess. This attitude contributes to cycles of poverty and instability in real families. The constant chaos and unpredictability in these fictional homes would be traumatic for real children. There's no stability, security, or peace. Instead, children live in environments where they never know what crisis will erupt next, what mood their parents will be in, or whether their basic needs will be met. This chronic stress would cause lasting developmental damage in reality. What's particularly insidious is how these shows use humor to make abuse palatable. When terrible behavior is packaged as comedy, our psychological defenses are lowered. We laugh at situations that should horrify us, gradually becoming desensitized to toxicity. This comedic reframing is a powerful tool that makes dysfunction seem normal and acceptable. The isolation these fictional families experience from healthy outside relationships is another red flag. They rarely maintain friendships or connections with functional people who might challenge their toxic patterns. This isolation prevents reality testing and allows dysfunction to flourish unchecked, much like how abusive relationships cut victims off from support systems. The power dynamics within these families are often rigidly hierarchical and authoritarian rather than collaborative and democratic. Decisions are made by whoever has the most power, regardless of how those decisions affect other family members. This teaches children that relationships are about dominance and submission, rather than mutual respect and partnership. Educational neglect is rampant in these fictional families, with parents showing little interest in their children's learning or development. Academic achievement is either ignored or mocked, extracurricular activities are dismissed as unimportant, and intellectual curiosity is discouraged. This attitude toward education perpetuates cycles of underachievement and limits children's future opportunities. The way these shows handle emotions is deeply problematic. Genuine feelings are ridiculed, emotional expression is punished, and vulnerability is treated as weakness. Family members learn to suppress their authentic selves to survive, creating fake personas while their true needs go unmet. This emotional suppression leads to profound psychological damage over time. Perhaps most tragically, these fictional families never model what healthy relationships actually look like. Viewers, especially children, don't see examples of mutual respect, effective communication, genuine affection, or supportive problem-solving. Without these positive models, they lack blueprints for creating healthier relationships in their own lives. The normalization of chaos as family life is perhaps the most damaging message these shows convey. They suggest that dysfunction is inevitable, that all families are messed up, and that toxic behavior is just part of human nature. This fatalistic view prevents people from recognizing that healthy families do exist and that change is possible with effort and commitment. As we wrap up this disturbing journey through the psychology of fictional families, I want you to consider how these portrayals might have influenced your own expectations about family life. Have you normalized behaviors in your own relationships that you wouldn't accept from strangers? Have you laughed off red flags that deserved serious attention? Have you repeated patterns you learned from these shows without questioning their healthiness? The power of media to shape our understanding of normal is immense, and these family shows wield that power irresponsibly. They present dysfunction as entertainment while failing to acknowledge the real pain such behaviors cause in actual families. By recognizing these patterns, we can begin to break free from toxic blueprints and create healthier relationships. Remember, just because something is common doesn't make it healthy. And just because something makes us laugh doesn't mean it's harmless. Real families deserve better than the chaos and cruelty we've been taught to accept as normal. You deserve better. Your future family deserves better. If this analysis has opened your eyes to patterns in your own life, consider seeking support from mental health professionals who can help you develop healthier relationship skills. Remember that recognizing dysfunction is the first step toward healing, and that breaking cycles of toxicity is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and future generations. What did you think of this deep dive into the dark psychology of fictional families? Did any of these patterns surprise you? Or did they confirm suspicions you already had? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more content that challenges the narratives we've been fed. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and most importantly, stay committed to creating healthier relationships than the ones we see on screen. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the most dysfunctional family on television. Today we're talking about something that's been bothering me for years watching Family Guy. Peter Griffin might be an absolute disaster of a human being, but honestly, his wife Lois has pulled some stunts that would make any reasonable person run straight to a divorce lawyer. I'm talking about moments so outrageous, so completely unforgivable, that you'll be questioning how this marriage even survived. We're counting down the 5 most shocking times Peter should have packed his bags and never looked back. Trust me when I say number 1 is going to blow your mind because it involves a certain pop star and some seriously questionable decisions. But before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because we've got tons more Family Guy content coming your way. Let's kick things off with number 5. And honestly, this one still makes me uncomfortable just thinking about it. Picture this. Lois Griffin, the supposedly devoted wife and mother, decides to have an affair with none other than former President Bill Clinton. Yeah, you heard that right. The President of the United States. Now, I know Family Guy is known for its outrageous storylines, but this one crosses every possible line you can imagine. The whole mess starts when Clinton rolls into Quahog for what's supposed to be an innocent beauty contest judging gig. His presidential limo conveniently breaks down right in front of the Griffin house, and suddenly Peter finds himself starstruck by his new famous friend. At first it seems harmless enough, just 2 guys hanging out causing minor mischief around town. But then Lois discovers Peter looking absolutely terrible the next morning, and she is not having it, especially when she finds out he brought home a random pig from their adventures. Now, here's where any normal person would just have a conversation with their pig spouse about boundaries and responsibility. But Lois Griffin is not normal people. Instead of talking to Peter directly, she marches herself over to Clinton's hotel room to give the former president a piece of her mind about corrupting her husband. Big mistake. And I mean astronomically huge mistake. Because the next thing you know, she's completely fallen for Clinton's legendary charm. The situation goes from bad to absolutely catastrophic when Peter walks in to find his wife in bed with the president. Can you even imagine that moment? The betrayal, the shock, the complete destruction of everything you thought you knew about your marriage. Peter literally catches them in the act, and Lois has the audacity to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness like this is just some minor marital hiccup. But here's the part that really gets me. Instead of demanding answers or showing any kind of backbone, Peter just accepts her pathetic excuse and even agrees to her twisted proposal that he can sleep with anyone he wants to get even. The whole situation is so messed up that even when Peter chooses to get revenge with Lois's own mother, The moral compass of this family is just completely broken. What makes this even worse is that this isn't just about physical betrayal, it's about the complete lack of respect Lois shows for her marriage and family. She throws away decades of marriage for a quick fling with a politician and somehow expects everything to just go back to normal. Any self-respecting person would have walked away right then and there, but not Peter Griffin. Moving on to number 4, and this one might actually be worse, because it involves someone who should be completely off limits. Meg's teenage boyfriend, Anthony. Now, I know what you're thinking. Meg actually managed to get a boyfriend. That's shocking enough on its own, but what Lois does next is absolutely unforgivable and frankly pretty disturbing. Anthony seems like a decent kid, probably the first normal person to show any interest in Meg, ever. Peter and Lois are initially thrilled that their daughter finally found someone. But then Anthony makes one innocent compliment about Lois looking like a movie star, and suddenly she's acting like a predator stalking her prey. The whole thing starts innocently enough with Lois just feeling flattered by the attention, but then she completely loses her mind and starts fantasizing about this underage kid. We're talking about a grown woman in her 40s getting worked up over a teenage boy who's dating her own daughter. The levels of wrong here are just astronomical, and it gets so much worse. Lois doesn't just fantasize, she takes action. She literally creates a schedule showing when Peter will be out of the house and when she'll be available. She hands this to a minor, along with details about her personal life that no teenager should ever know about. The predatory behavior is so blatant and disturbing that it's honestly hard to watch. When she finally makes her move and tries to seduce Anthony, the kid is surprisingly into it, which somehow makes the whole situation even more disturbing. But of course, Meg walks in at the worst possible moment and catches her own mother trying to hook up with her boyfriend. The emotional damage this causes to Meg is something that family will probably never recover from. The worst part about this whole scenario is how Lois handles getting caught. Instead of taking responsibility for her completely inappropriate behavior, she manipulates the situation to make herself the victim. She tells Peter that he makes her feel old and ugly, essentially blaming him for her decision to prey on a teenager. And Peter, being the spineless disaster that he is, actually apologizes to her, and the whole thing gets swept under the rug like nothing happened. This right here should have been the end of their marriage. There's no coming back from trying to sleep with your daughter's underage boyfriend. The betrayal of trust. The emotional damage to Meg. The complete breakdown of appropriate boundaries. It's all unforgivable. But somehow, Peter just lets it slide, and life goes on as normal in the Griffin household. Coming in at number 3, we have the time Lois discovered gambling and literally bet away the family car at a casino. This one starts innocently enough, with the family taking a road trip to help Chris with his Boy Scout troubles. Peter, being Peter, refuses to ask for directions, even when they're clearly lost, and the situation gets worse when he needs to make an emergency bathroom stop at a Native American casino. While Peter handles his business, Lois finds herself with some free time, and that's when she spots the poker machines. Now, for most people, this would be a harmless distraction, maybe lose a few dollars and move on with your day. But Lois Griffin has zero impulse control, and within minutes, she's completely hooked on gambling. The addiction happens so fast, it's actually frightening to watch. One minute she's just curious about the flashing lights and sounds, the next minute she's feeding money into these machines like her life depends on it. Peter literally has to drag her away from the gambling floor when it's time to leave, but the damage is already done. Lois has caught the gambling bug, and it's about to destroy everything. Here's where the story goes from concerning to absolutely insane. While Peter is distracted, Lois manages to lose the family car in a poker game. She literally gambles away their primary means of transportation, stranding the entire family at a casino in the middle of nowhere. The level of irresponsibility and selfishness it takes to make that kind of decision is just staggering. Peter ends up having to pretend to be Native American and spend a night hungry in the forest just to win back their car through some ridiculous tribal challenge. The fact that he actually pulls this off is a miracle, but that doesn't excuse what Lois did. She put her entire family at risk because she couldn't control herself around some flashing lights and the sound of coins dropping. The gambling addiction reveals something really dark about Lois's character. She's willing to sacrifice her family's security and well-being for the temporary thrill of potentially winning money. This isn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. It's a fundamental character flaw that shows she can't be trusted with important decisions. Any reasonable person would have serious doubts about continuing a marriage with someone who would gamble away the family car on a whim. What makes this even more frustrating is that there are no real consequences for Lois's actions. Peter saves the day, gets the car back, and they all go home like nothing happened. There's no discussion about gambling addiction, no acknowledgement of how her behavior could have left them stranded, no recognition that this kind of impulse control problem might be a serious issue in their marriage. Now we're getting to the really disturbing stuff, with number 2, where Lois reads one book about minimalism and completely loses her mind in the most destructive way possible. This episode perfectly captures how Lois tends to take any new idea and push it to absolutely insane extremes without any regard for how it affects her family. The whole disaster starts when Lois discovers a book about decluttering and minimalism. The basic concept is pretty reasonable: getting rid of unnecessary stuff to focus on what truly brings you joy. Most people would maybe clean out a closet or donate some old clothes, but not Lois Griffin. She decides that minimalism means literally throwing away everything and everyone in her life that doesn't spark immediate happiness. The author of this minimalism book claims to have learned these revolutionary insights by meditating on a bridge in Asia, which should have been a red flag that this isn't exactly scientific advice. But Lois is so desperate to find meaning in her life that she latches onto this philosophy like it's going to solve all her problems. What starts as organizing and decluttering quickly escalates to Lois throwing away family belongings without permission. She's making unilateral decisions about what brings the family joy, completely ignoring everyone else's feelings and attachments to their possessions. The lack of consideration for her family's feelings and the authoritarian way she starts controlling everyone's lives is just incredibly toxic. But then Lois takes it to the ultimate extreme and decides that her own family doesn't bring her enough joy, so she kicks them out of the house. Peter, Chris, Meg, Brian, and Stewie all end up living in a storage unit while Lois enjoys her empty minimalist paradise. Can you imagine throwing your own children out of their home because a self-help book told you to focus on joy? This is abandonment of the highest order. The situation gets even more surreal when Lois decides that she herself is clutter and needs to be thrown away. She literally abandons her family completely, leaving behind only a vague note before disappearing entirely. Her husband and children have no idea where she is or if she's even alive. This level of selfish behavior goes way beyond any normal marital problems. It takes Lois falling into an actual garbage barge and nearly drowning in trash for her to realize that maybe throwing away your entire family wasn't the brilliant idea she thought it was. She comes back home babbling about how garbage is wonderful and everything is garbage, which doesn't exactly inspire confidence that she's learned anything meaningful from this experience. The fact that Peter just welcomes her back after she abandoned the entire family shows an incredible lack of self-respect. Lois literally threw away her marriage and her children because a book told her to focus on joy, and somehow that's just something they all moved past, like it was a minor disagreement about dinner plans. Finally, we reach number 1, and this is the most disturbing example of all. Lois has a midlife crisis meltdown and ends up trying to seduce Justin Bieber, who at the time was clearly underage. This isn't just inappropriate behavior, this is straight-up predatory and potentially criminal activity. The whole nightmare begins when Lois is feeling down about getting older, and Peter makes everything worse by reading her a birthday poem that basically lists all the ways she's aged and become less attractive. Now, granted, Peter's poem is incredibly insensitive and hurtful, but that doesn't justify what Lois does next. Instead of having an adult conversation about feeling unappreciated, or seeking therapy, or literally any other healthy coping mechanism, Lois decides to have a complete psychological breakdown. She starts dressing like a teenager and acting like she's in high school again, which is already embarrassing enough for a middle-aged mother. But then, things take a turn into seriously illegal territory when Justin Bieber comes to town, and Lois becomes obsessed with meeting him. She shows up at his concert acting like a screaming teenage fan, which is cringe-worthy enough when you're watching a grown woman embarrass herself on live television while her family watches in horror. The situation reaches peak disturbing when Lois actually tracks down Bieber's dressing room and tries to seduce him. She bribes a security guard, gets into his private area, and starts making advances on someone who is clearly a minor. The power dynamic here is incredibly disturbing, an adult woman using her age and experience to manipulate a teenage celebrity. When she tells this underage kid to take his pants off, that's when this crosses the line from inappropriate into potentially criminal behavior. This isn't just a midlife crisis. This is predatory behavior that would absolutely result in criminal charges if this happened in real life. The fact that Peter shows up just in time to stop anything from happening doesn't excuse what Lois was attempting to do. What makes this even more infuriating is how the episode handles the aftermath. Peter and Lois have a heart-to-heart conversation where they both admit to having insecurities, and suddenly everything is forgiven. There's no acknowledgement that Lois literally tried to commit a felony or that her behavior was completely unacceptable under any circumstances. This pattern of behavior throughout all these episodes shows that Lois Griffin is fundamentally selfish, manipulative, and completely unable to take responsibility for her actions. Whether she's cheating with presidents, gambling away family property, abandoning her children, or attempting to seduce minors, she always finds a way to make herself the victim and avoid any real consequences. Peter Griffin might be an idiot, but he deserves better than a wife who consistently betrays their marriage vows, endangers their family, and commits potentially criminal acts whenever she feels a little bit unhappy with her life. Any of these incidents individually would be grounds for divorce, but all of them together paint a picture of someone who is completely unfit to be a wife and mother. The most frustrating part is that Family Guy treats all of this like it's just harmless comedy, when in reality, these behaviors would destroy any real family. Lois Griffin represents the worst possible partner, someone who takes no responsibility, lies, manipulates, and puts her own selfish desires above the safety and well-being of her family. So there you have it, folks. 5 times when Peter Griffin should have absolutely divorced Lois and never looked back. From presidential affairs to attempted felonies, this woman has done things that would end any normal marriage immediately. Let me know in the comments which one of these shocked you the most, and whether you think there are any other Lois moments that deserve to be on this list. Don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Griffin family dysfunction, and subscribe for more Family Guy content. We've got tons more episodes to break down, and trust me, there's no shortage of material when it comes to this completely insane cartoon family. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m., desperately trying to fall asleep, but your brain just won't shut off. You need something familiar, something comforting, something that won't keep you wide awake analyzing plot twists. Enter Family Guy, the animated sitcom that's somehow become the internet's unofficial lullaby. Tonight, we're diving into the most relaxing Family Guy facts that'll have you drifting off to dreamland faster than Peter Griffin running from a giant chicken. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why millions of people choose Family Guy as their go-to sleep show? It's not just you. There's actually a whole community of people who can't sleep without hearing the familiar voices of the Griffin family playing softly in the background. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this chaotic animated family has become the world's most unlikely sleep aid. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Family Guy wasn't supposed to be a bedtime show at all. When Seth MacFarlane first pitched the series back in the late 1992, he envisioned it as appointment television, something families would gather around to watch together on Sunday nights. The irony is beautiful when you think about it. A show designed to grab your attention and keep you glued to the screen has somehow evolved into the perfect background noise for drifting off to sleep. The science behind this phenomenon is actually fascinating. Sleep experts call it the familiar stimulation effect. Your brain craves just enough stimulation to distract it from the day's worries, but not so much that it becomes fully engaged. Family Guy hits this sweet spot perfectly. The episodes follow predictable patterns that your subconscious mind finds comforting, while the humor provides just enough entertainment to quiet those racing thoughts that keep you awake. Here's something that'll blow your mind. The average Family Guy episode contains approximately 847 individual animation cells. That's nearly 850 hand-drawn images flowing together to create just 22 minutes of content. When you're lying there with your eyes closed, your brain isn't processing these visuals, but it's still registering the consistent rhythm of the animation. This creates a subtle, almost hypnotic effect that naturally slows your heart rate and prepares your body for sleep. Speaking of rhythm, let's talk about those famous cutaway gags. You know, those seemingly random flashbacks that interrupt the main story. Remember that time when has become one of the most recognizable phrases in television history. But here's what makes them perfect for sleep. They're completely self-contained. You don't need to follow a complex storyline or remember plot details from previous episodes. Each cutaway is like a tiny standalone story that your drowsy brain can process without effort. The voice actors themselves have become part of WWWWW, this sleep ritual for millions of viewers. Seth MacFarlane voices not just Peter Griffin, but also Brian the dog, Stewie the baby, and Glenn Quagmire. His vocal range is so distinctive that your brain immediately recognizes these characters even when you're half asleep. It's like having a familiar friend telling you bedtime stories, except these friends happen to be a talking dog with a martini problem and a baby bent on world domination. Here's a delightful fact that'll make you smile as you drift off. The character of Brian Griffin was originally going to be much more dog-like in the early concept stages. MacFarlane wanted him to occasionally chase cars and bark at mailmen. But as the character developed, Brian evolved into the most human-like member of the family, often serving as the voice of reason among all the chaos. This evolution created the perfect sleep companion, a character whose calm, measured voice could anchor you when the show got too zany. The show's music deserves special recognition in the sleep department. Composer Ron Jones and later David Zippel created soundtracks that perfectly complement the show's mood without being jarring or overstimulating. The background music flows seamlessly from scene to scene, creating an audio landscape that's engaging enough to hold your attention, but gentle enough to let you relax. It's like having a personal soundtrack to your journey into dreamland. Let's dive into something truly remarkable about the show's production that makes it ideal for repeated viewing, which is essential for a good sleep show. Each episode takes approximately 8 months to produce, from initial script to final animation. This lengthy process allows for incredible attention to detail that rewards both active and passive viewing. When you're actively watching, you catch visual gags and subtle references. When you're falling asleep, your brain picks up on the consistency and craftsmanship without you even realizing it. The character development over the years has created something like a comfortable old sweater for viewers. Peter Griffin's predictable unpredictability, Lois's patient exasperation, Chris's awkward teenage energy, Meg's perpetual search for acceptance, Stewie's sophisticated vocabulary wrapped in a baby's body, and Brian's intellectual pretensions all combine to create a family dynamic that feels familiar, even when the situations are completely absurd. Here's something that makes Family Guy uniquely suited for sleep watching. The show operates on what comedy writers call escalating absurdity. Each scene builds on the previous one, but not in a way that requires intense concentration. Instead, the absurdity creates a dreamlike quality that mirrors the way your mind naturally drifts as you fall asleep. Your thoughts become increasingly disconnected and surreal, just like a typical Family Guy episode. The cultural references in Family Guy span decades, from 1,950 seconds television shows to contemporary internet memes. This creates a comforting sense of shared cultural knowledge. Even if you don't get every reference, your brain recognizes the patterns and rhythms of pop culture commentary. It's like being wrapped in a blanket made of collective memories, which is incredibly soothing when you're trying to wind down for the night. One of the most sleep-friendly aspects of Family Guy is its episodic nature. Unlike serialized dramas, where missing an episode means losing crucial plot developments, Family Guy resets after each episode. The Griffin family ends each adventure more or less where they started, which means you can drop in and out of episodes without feeling lost. This removes the anxiety of needing to pay attention. freeing your mind to relax and drift away. The show's approach to time and logic is wonderfully elastic, which mirrors how our minds work during the transition to sleep. In Family Guy, characters can travel through time, alternate dimensions, or simply exist in different versions of reality within the same episode. This flexible relationship with continuity creates a dreamlike atmosphere where anything is possible, but nothing really matters, perfectly matching the mental state you want to achieve before sleep. Let's talk about the genius of Stewie Griffin's character development as a sleep aid. Initially conceived as a villain bent on matricide, Stewie evolved into something much more complex and, frankly, more soothing. His relationship with Brian, particularly in their Road 2 episodes, creates some of the show's most heartwarming moments. These episodes often feature extended conversations between the baby and the dog as they navigate various adventures together. The steady dialogue and genuine friendship between these characters provides the perfect auditory backdrop for falling asleep. The animation style itself contributes to the show's sleep-inducing qualities. The character designs are simple and clean, with bold colors and clear lines that don't strain the eyes during those moments when you're peeking at the screen. The movements are fluid but not hyperkinetic, creating a visual rhythm that's more lulling than stimulating. Even the explosions and action sequences maintain a cartoon quality that feels safe and non-threatening. Here's a fascinating production detail that affects how the show functions as a sleep aid. The dialogue is recorded first. Then the animation is created to match the voice performances. This process, called prelay, means that the timing and rhythm of every line delivery is precisely crafted before any visuals are created. The result is incredibly natural-sounding dialogue that flows like real conversation, making it easy for your brain to process even when you're not fully conscious. The show's handling of music and sound effects is particularly sleep-friendly. Unlike action movies or dramas that use sudden loud noises to create tension, Family Guy maintains relatively consistent audio levels throughout each episode. The sound mixing is designed for television broadcast, which means it's optimized for consistent volume levels that won't jolt you awake with unexpected loud moments. Family Guy's relationship with its own absurdity creates what psychologists call cognitive ease. When a show acknowledges its own ridiculousness, it removes the mental effort required to make sense of what you're watching. You don't need to analyze character motivations or predict plot developments because the show itself admits that logic isn't the point. This cognitive ease is incredibly valuable when you're trying to turn off your analytical mind and prepare for sleep. The recurring characters and settings in Family Guy create a sense of home that's perfect for bedtime viewing. The Griffin House, the Drunken Clam Bar, Quahog's various locations, and these places become as familiar as your own neighborhood. This familiarity triggers a psychological response, similar to being in your childhood bedroom, creating feelings of safety and comfort that naturally promote sleep. One of the most overlooked aspects of Family Guy's sleepworthiness is its emotional consistency. While the situations are wildly unpredictable, the emotional core of the show remains stable. Peter loves his family despite being selfish and immature. Lois tries to hold everything together while maintaining her own identity. The kids navigate growing up with parents who are essentially overgrown children themselves. These emotional truths provide an anchor of stability beneath all the chaos. The show's use of cultural nostalgia taps into what researchers call nostalgic reverie, a mental state that naturally promotes relaxation and positive feelings. Whether it's referencing classic movies, old television shows, or bygone eras, Family Guy constantly evokes the warm feelings associated with remembering better times. This nostalgic quality makes the show feel like comfort food for your brain. Here's something remarkable about the show's longevity that contributes to its effectiveness as a sleep aid. With over 400 episodes spanning more than 2 decades, Family Guy offers an enormous library of content that you can cycle through without repetition becoming boring. The sheer volume of episodes means you can watch for months without seeing the same episode twice, but the consistent formula means every episode feels familiar enough to be comforting. The character of Glenn Quagmire, despite his often problematic behavior, serves an important function in the show's sleep ecosystem. His predictable catchphrases and exaggerated personality traits create audio cues that your brain recognizes instantly. When you hear giggity, your subconscious knows exactly where you are in the Family Guy universe, providing a sense of orientation even when you're barely conscious. The show's approach to violence and conflict is uniquely suited for bedtime viewing. Unlike realistic dramas where violence has consequences and emotional weight, Family Guy treats physical comedy like old-school cartoons. Characters can be blown up, flattened, or injured in spectacular ways, but they always bounce back without lasting harm. This removes the stress and anxiety that realistic violence might create when you're trying to relax. Family Guy's relationship with its own timeline creates a dreamlike quality that mirrors how memories work during sleep. Characters reference events that may or may not have happened in previous episodes, and the show's continuity is deliberately loose and inconsistent. This mirrors how your brain processes information during sleep, connecting random memories and experiences in ways that don't always make logical sense. The writing style of Family Guy incorporates what comedy experts call stream of consciousness humor. Jokes flow into each other through loose associations rather than rigid logical connections. This style mimics the way thoughts naturally drift when you're falling asleep, making it easy for your mind to follow along without requiring focused attention. One often overlooked element that makes Family Guy perfect for sleep is its treatment of time within episodes. Unlike shows that maintain strict chronological order, Family Guy freely jumps between past, present, and future, often within the same scene. This fluid relationship with time removes the pressure to follow a linear narrative, allowing your mind to drift in and out of attention without losing track of what's happening. The show's ensemble cast creates multiple entry points for your attention throughout each episode. If Peter's storyline doesn't hold your interest, Stewie and Brian might be having an intriguing conversation. If the main plot becomes too energetic, there's usually a quieter subplot running in parallel. This variety ensures that there's always something appropriate for whatever level of consciousness you're experiencing. The color palette used in Family Guy is specifically designed to be easy on the eyes. The bright, primary colors are bold enough to be visible in low-light conditions, but not so intense that they're overstimulating. The backgrounds use muted tones that don't compete with the character animation, creating a visual environment that's engaging but not exhausting. Here's a production secret that affects how the show works as a sleep aid. The recording sessions for Family Guy often involve the voice actors improvising and riffing off each other, creating natural conversational rhythms that aren't always present in more scripted shows. These improvisational moments add an organic quality to the dialogue that makes it feel like overhearing real conversations, which is inherently soothing. The show's use of callback humor creates what psychologists call recognition pleasure, the satisfaction of understanding references to previous episodes or jokes. This creates a reward system for regular viewers that doesn't require intense concentration. Even when you're half asleep, your brain still experiences the mild pleasure of recognizing familiar references, reinforcing positive associations with the viewing experience. Family Guy's approach to celebrity impressions and parodies provides another layer of comfort for sleepy viewers. The impressions are usually exaggerated enough to be immediately recognizable, but not so precise that they require focused attention to appreciate. Whether it's a parody of a famous movie scene or an impression of a well-known celebrity, these elements provide familiar touchstones that help anchor your drifting attention. The show's treatment of its own mistakes and inconsistencies is refreshingly honest and, paradoxically, quite soothing. Characters occasionally break the fourth wall to acknowledge plot holes or continuity errors, which removes any pressure you might feel to make sense of everything you're seeing. This meta-humor creates a sense that you're in on the joke, fostering a feeling of inclusion and comfort. The pacing of Family Guy episodes is carefully designed to maintain interest without creating urgency. Unlike action shows that use rapid cuts and escalating tension to keep viewers engaged, Family Guy uses a more relaxed rhythm that allows for natural breathing room between jokes and plot developments. This pacing aligns well with the slowing brain activity that occurs as you transition towards sleep. One final thought as we wind down together. The true genius of Family Guy as a sleep aid lies in its fundamental paradox. It's a show about a dysfunctional family that somehow makes you feel like part of a functional one. Despite all their flaws, fights, and ridiculous adventures, the Griffin family always comes back together. They forgive each other's mistakes, support each other through crises, and maintain their bonds despite everything that tries to tear them apart. This underlying message of unconditional family love, buried beneath layers of irreverent humor and chaotic plotting, provides the emotional foundation that makes Family Guy so comforting. When you're lying in bed, vulnerable and preparing to surrender consciousness for several hours, there's something deeply reassuring about spending time with a family that, despite everything, genuinely cares about each other. So tonight, as you settle in with another episode of Family Guy playing softly in the background, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon. You're participating in a ritual shared by millions of people around the world who have discovered that sometimes the best way to fall asleep is to spend time with the Griffin family. Sweet dreams, and don't forget to set your sleep timer. Want to drift off to sleep while learning some wild Family Guy facts? Perfect. Let me take you on a gentle journey through the chaotic world of Quahog, Rhode Island, where nothing is quite what it seems, and everything is fair game for comedy. Family Guy first aired on January 31st, 1999, and from day one it was clear this wasn't your typical animated sitcom. Created by Seth MacFarlane when he was just 24 years old, the show began as his senior thesis project at the Rhode Island School of Design. That student film caught the attention of Fox executives, who saw something special in MacFarlane's irreverent humor and distinctive animation style. The Griffin family consists of Peter, the well-meaning but often clueless father who works at a toy factory, Lois, his patient wife from a wealthy family, their 3 children Meg, Chris, and baby Stewie, plus Brian, their intellectual talking dog. What makes this family unique isn't just that their dog can speak, but that each character represents a different comedic archetype pushed to its absolute extreme. Stewie Griffin, the baby with the British accent and sophisticated vocabulary, wasn't originally meant to be the breakout character he became. In early seasons, his primary motivation was world domination and eliminating his mother Lois. His elaborate schemes and advanced technology created some of the show's most memorable moments. The character's intelligence was so advanced that he built time machines, created clones of himself, and developed weapons that would make military contractors jealous. The show's cutaway gags became its signature storytelling device. These random flashbacks and tangential scenes allowed writers to explore absurd scenarios without worrying about plot continuity. One moment Peter might be arguing with his neighbor, and suddenly we're transported to medieval times or watching a parody of a classic movie. This technique gave Family Guy unlimited creative freedom and became one of its most beloved features. Brian the dog serves as the show's voice of reason, though he's far from perfect. He's an aspiring writer who never quite achieves his literary dreams, a liberal who often comes across as pretentious, and an alcoholic who struggles with personal relationships. His friendship with baby Stewie created some of the series' most touching and hilarious moments, as these 2 unlikely companions embarked on adventures through time and space. The show's relationship with censorship has always been complicated. From its earliest episodes, Family Guy pushed boundaries that other animated shows wouldn't dare approach. The writers seemed to delight in finding new ways to shock audiences while still maintaining enough heart to keep viewers emotionally invested. This balancing act between outrageous humor and genuine emotion became the series' trademark. Family Guy's cancellation and resurrection story reads like a television miracle. After 3 seasons, Fox canceled the show due to declining ratings. However, reruns on Adult Swim and strong DVD sales demonstrated that the show had found its audience. Fan campaigns and impressive syndication numbers convinced Fox to bring the series back, making Family Guy one of the few shows to return from cancellation and achieve even greater success. The voice acting on Family Guy deserves special recognition. Seth MacFarlane voices not only Brian and Stewie, but also Peter Griffin and Glenn Quagmire, among others. His ability to switch between these distinct characters, often within the same scene, showcases remarkable vocal range. The supporting cast, including Alex Borstein as Lois, Mila Kunis as Meg, and Seth Green as Chris, brings depth and personality to their roles that extends far beyond simple cartoon voice work. Music plays a surprisingly important role in Family Guy's appeal. The show regularly features elaborate musical numbers that parody Broadway productions, classic films, or popular songs. These sequences often become standalone entertainment pieces that fans remember long after episodes end. MacFarlane's background in musical theater influences these segments, bringing professional quality arrangements and performances to animated comedy. The show's pop culture references span decades and genres. Whether parodying Star Wars, paying homage to classic television shows, or making jokes about contemporary celebrities, Family Guy operates as a cultural time capsule. These references create layers of humor that reward viewers with broad cultural knowledge while still remaining accessible to casual audiences. Family Guy's international success surprised many industry observers. The show airs in over 100 countries and has been translated into dozens of languages. What works as American humor apparently translates well across cultural boundaries, though some countries have edited or banned certain episodes due to content concerns. The animation style of Family Guy deliberately evokes classic television cartoons while incorporating modern techniques. The character designs are simple yet expressive, allowing for quick production turnaround while maintaining visual consistency. This approach enables the show to tackle current events and topical humor without lengthy production delays. Behind the scenes, Family Guy employs a large writing staff that includes many comedy veterans. The writer's room operates on collaborative principles where any idea, no matter how outrageous, gets consideration. This environment encourages creativity and risk-taking that translates directly into the show's unpredictable content. The show's treatment of controversial topics has evolved over its run. Early episodes pushed boundaries primarily for shock value, but later seasons began incorporating more sophisticated social commentary. This evolution reflects both changing cultural attitudes and the writer's growing confidence in addressing serious subjects through comedy. Family Guy merchandise extends far beyond typical television tie-ins. From clothing and toys to video games and books, the Griffin family's image appears on countless products. The show's quotable dialogue and memorable visual gags translate well to consumer goods, creating additional revenue streams that support continued production. The relationship between Family Guy and The Simpsons has fascinated animation fans for years. While both shows feature dysfunctional families and satirical humor, their approaches differ significantly. Family Guy's more chaotic structure and willingness to break narrative rules contrasts with The Simpsons' more grounded storytelling approach. Yet both shows clearly influence each other. Guest stars on Family Guy include major Hollywood names who often play exaggerated versions of themselves. These appearances usually involve the celebrities being subjected to the same irreverent treatment as any other target of the show's humor. The willingness of famous people to participate suggests that being mocked on Family Guy has become a strange mark of cultural relevance. The show's impact on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, video clips, and quotable moments from Family Guy circulate online constantly. The show's visual humor and memorable one-liners make it perfect for social media sharing, extending its cultural reach far beyond traditional television viewing. Family Guy's production schedule requires incredible efficiency. Animated shows typically have longer lead times than live-action productions, but Family Guy maintains a pace that allows for relatively current topical humor. This balance between animation constraints and comedy timing requires careful planning and execution from the entire production team. The show's portrayal of religion, politics, and social issues often generates discussion and debate. Rather than taking consistent ideological positions, Family Guy seems more interested in finding humor in all perspectives. This approach allows the show to maintain broad appeal, while still engaging with serious topics that matter to audiences. Character development on Family Guy follows unusual patterns compared to traditional television. While most shows feature characters who grow and change over time, Family Guy characters often reset to their baseline personalities between episodes. This approach prioritizes comedy over continuity, allowing writers maximum flexibility in crafting jokes and storylines. The economics of Family Guy's success demonstrate the value of patient investment in creative content. The show's initial cancellation and subsequent revival created a case study in how dedicated fan bases can rescue quality entertainment. This success story has influenced how networks evaluate shows with devoted but initially small audiences. Family Guy's influence on other animated comedies is clearly visible across the television landscape. Shows that followed have adopted similar rapid-fire joke delivery, pop culture references, and willingness to break conventional narrative rules. The series helped establish a new template for adult animated comedy that continues inspiring creators today. The show's approach to historical events and figures creates educational opportunities wrapped in entertainment. While the historical accuracy might be questionable, Family Guy's treatment of past events encourages viewers to learn more about the real stories behind the jokes. This combination of education and entertainment reaches audiences who might otherwise avoid traditional historical programming. Family Guy's live-action sequences and special episodes demonstrate the creative team's willingness to experiment with format. These departures from standard animated episodes show technical ambition and creative risk-taking that keeps the series fresh after more than 2 decades on air. The show's international versions sometimes feature localized content while maintaining the core Family Guy sensibility. These adaptations highlight how universal certain types of humor can be, while also showing how comedy must sometimes adapt to specific cultural contexts. As we wrap up this gentle exploration of Family Guy's world, remember that behind all the chaos and controversy lies a show created by people who genuinely love comedy and aren't afraid to push boundaries in pursuit of laughs. Whether you find Family Guy hilarious or offensive probably depends on your personal comedy preferences, but there's no denying its impact on television and popular culture. The Griffin family continues their adventures in Quahog, bringing their particular brand of mayhem to audiences around the world. From Stewie's latest schemes to Peter's newest workplace disaster, from Brian's philosophical observations to the family's bizarre encounters with neighbors and celebrities, Family Guy remains a unique voice in animated television. So as you drift off to sleep, perhaps you'll dream of talking dogs and time-traveling babies, of elaborate musical numbers and impossible sight gags. In the world of Family Guy, anything can happen, and usually does. Sweet dreams. And remember that in Quahog, Rhode Island, normal is just a setting on the washing machine that nobody ever uses. The show's legacy continues growing with each new episode. Each new generation of fans discovering the Griffin family's adventures for the first time. Whether Family Guy maintains its edge or evolves with changing times, one thing remains certain. Peter, Lois, Meg, Chris, Stewie, and Brian have earned their place in television history as one of the most distinctive and memorable animated families ever created.
Have you ever wondered what secrets lurk behind one of television's most controversial animated series? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes shocking world of Family Guy, with facts so fascinating they might just help you drift off to sleep. But trust me, you'll want to stay awake for these incredible revelations about Seth MacFarlane's groundbreaking creation. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in his tiny apartment, sketching out what would become one of the most polarizing shows in television history. Little did he know that his crude drawings of a dysfunctional Rhode Island family would spawn over 2 decades of entertainment, controversy, and cultural impact that continues to this day. Family Guy didn't just stumble into existence by accident. The show's origin story is actually rooted in MacFarlane's college thesis project at the Rhode Island School of Design. Back in 1995, he created a short film called The Life of Larry, featuring a middle-aged man named Larry and his talking dog. This 9-minute animated short caught the attention of television executives and eventually evolved into the Family Guy we know today. What's remarkable is that many of the core elements from that original student film made it directly into the series, proving that sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places. The casting process for Family Guy reveals some truly surprising facts that most fans never discover. Seth MacFarlane himself voices not just one, but 4 major characters in the show. He's the voice behind Peter Griffin, Brian the dog, Stewie Griffin, and Glenn Quagmire. What's even more impressive is that MacFarlane can seamlessly switch between these vastly different vocal personalities during recording sessions, often having entire conversations with himself as different characters. The other voice actors frequently joke that they feel like they're working with a one-man show, since MacFarlane essentially carries the comedic weight of multiple personalities. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, actually wasn't the original choice for the character. The role was initially offered to Lacey Chabert, who you might recognize from Mean Girls and Party of Five. Chabert did voice Meg Griffin in the early seasons, but scheduling conflicts led to her departure, and Mila Kunis stepped in to take over. Meanwhile, Borstein had been working as a writer and consultant on the show before landing the role of Lois, making her transition to voice acting feel completely natural. The show's animation style might look simple, but there's incredible complexity hidden beneath those seemingly basic character designs. Each episode of Family Guy requires approximately 8 months to complete from initial script to final broadcast. The animation process involves hundreds of artists, animators, and technicians working across multiple studios. What's particularly fascinating is that the show uses a hybrid approach, combining traditional hand-drawn animation with computer-generated elements. Those elaborate fight scenes and musical numbers that fans love so much often require specialized animation techniques that push the boundaries of television production budgets. Speaking of production, Family Guy has one of the most unusual writing rooms in television. The writer's room operates more like a comedy club than a traditional television writing environment. Writers are encouraged to pitch their wildest, most outrageous ideas without any filters. Many of the show's most memorable cutaway gags actually come from spontaneous brainstorming sessions where writers try to one-up each other with increasingly absurd scenarios. The famous "Bird is the Word" episode, for example, originated from a writer casually mentioning the old Trashmen song, which then spiraled into an entire episode concept within hours. The show's relationship with censorship and network standards has created some legendary behind-the-scenes stories. During its early years on Fox, Family Guy constantly pushed against network restrictions, leading to numerous battles over content. Some episodes were heavily edited or had entire segments removed before airing. Interestingly, when the show moved to Adult Swim and later back to Fox with renewed popularity, many of these previously censored segments were restored in DVD releases and streaming versions, giving fans access to the creator's original, uncensored vision. Family Guy's cancellation and resurrection story reads like something out of a Hollywood fairy tale. After 3 seasons, Fox canceled the show in 2002 due to declining ratings. However, something unprecedented happened. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created a massive surge in popularity. Fans organized campaigns, online petitions gained hundreds of thousands of signatures, and merchandise sales skyrocketed. This grassroots movement convinced Fox to revive the series in 2005, making Family Guy one of the first shows in television history to be brought back to life primarily due to fan demand and home video success. The show's cultural impact extends far beyond television screens. Family Guy has influenced internet culture in ways that most people don't realize. Many popular memes and viral video formats can trace their origins back to Family Guy episodes. The show's cutaway gag structure has become a template for online content creators, and phrases like "freakin' sweet" and "giggity giggity" have entered everyday vocabulary. Social media platforms are filled with Family Guy reaction GIFs and quotes, demonstrating the show's lasting influence on digital communication. Seth MacFarlane's musical background plays a crucial role in Family Guy's identity that often goes unnoticed. MacFarlane is an accomplished jazz singer and pianist who has released several albums and performed with major orchestras. This musical talent directly influences the show's frequent musical numbers and elaborate song and dance sequences. When characters break into song, MacFarlane often personally composes the music and provides vocal arrangements. Some of the show's most memorable moments, like Stewie and Brian's road trip songs or Peter's various musical adventures, showcase MacFarlane's genuine musical abilities rather than just comedy writing. The voice recording process for Family Guy involves some truly unique techniques that create the show's distinctive sound. Unlike many animated series where actors record their lines separately, Family Guy often brings the core cast together for group recording sessions. This allows for more natural interactions and improvised moments between characters. Seth Green, who voices Chris Griffin, frequently ad-libs during these sessions, leading to some of the characters' most endearing moments. The chemistry between voice actors during these collaborative recording sessions contributes significantly to the family dynamic that makes the show feel authentic despite its outrageous scenarios. Family Guy's international variations reveal fascinating cultural adaptations that most American viewers never see. Different countries have created their own localized versions of certain episodes, replacing American pop culture references with local celebrities and cultural touchstones. The show airs in over 50 countries, and each region has unique censorship requirements that lead to different editing approaches. Some countries focus heavily on removing violence while allowing sexual content, while others take the opposite approach. These international versions sometimes create entirely different comedic rhythms and viewing experiences. The show's relationship with guest stars has produced some incredible behind-the-scenes stories. Many celebrities who appear on Family Guy are longtime fans who specifically request to be part of episodes. Conway Twitty, whose music videos frequently interrupt episodes as random cutaway gags, became a running joke specifically because MacFarlane and the writers found his earnest country music performances hilariously incongruous with the show's irreverent tone. Some guest stars have recorded multiple episodes worth of material during single recording sessions, allowing the show to feature their characters across multiple seasons. Family Guy's approach to controversial topics has created a unique position in television comedy. The show operates under what writers call the equal opportunity offense philosophy, meaning that no topic, group, or individual is considered off-limits for comedic treatment. This approach has generated both criticism and praise from various quarters, but it has also allowed the show to address social issues in ways that more conventional programming cannot. Episodes dealing with topics like religion, politics, and social justice often use humor as a vehicle for presenting multiple perspectives on complex issues. The technical aspects of Family Guy's production reveal impressive attention to detail that viewers might not notice. The show's color palette has evolved significantly over its run, with newer episodes featuring more sophisticated lighting and shading techniques. Background artists create incredibly detailed environments that often include visual jokes and Easter eggs that reward careful viewers. The Drunken Clam, the Griffin House, and other recurring locations contain hundreds of small details that remain consistent across episodes, creating a lived-in feel that supports the show's fictional world. Family Guy's impact on other animated series cannot be overstated. The show's success paved the way for adult-oriented animated comedies like American Dad, The Cleveland Show, and Rick and Morty. Its influence on writing style, particularly the use of non-sequitur cutaway gags and pop culture references, has become a standard template for animated comedy. Many current animated series creators cite Family Guy as a direct influence on their own work, demonstrating its lasting impact on the medium. The show's merchandise empire extends into surprisingly diverse areas. Beyond typical television show merchandise like t-shirts and toys, Family Guy has inspired everything from mobile apps to theme park attractions. The show's characters appear on products ranging from breakfast cereals to automobile accessories. This merchandising success has contributed significantly to the show's financial viability and cultural presence, making Family Guy characters recognizable, even to people who don't regularly watch the series. Family Guy's writing team includes some of television's most talented comedy writers, many of whom have gone on to create their own successful series. The show serves as a training ground for comedy writers, providing them with experience in rapid-fire joke writing, character development, and serialized storytelling. Alumni of the Family Guy writing staff have contributed to shows like The Simpsons, South Park, and Saturday Night Live, spreading the show's comedic influence throughout the industry. The show's approach to character development over multiple seasons reveals sophisticated long-term storytelling strategies. While Family Guy is known for its episodic nature and reset-button storytelling, careful viewers can trace character evolution across seasons. Stewie's gradual shift from world domination fantasies to more nuanced character interactions, Brian's ongoing struggles with alcoholism and romantic relationships, and Peter's various career changes all represent subtle character development that occurs alongside the show's more obvious comedic elements. Family Guy's relationship with current events and topical humor requires incredibly fast production turnarounds that most viewers don't appreciate. The show's writers and animators often work under extreme time pressure to incorporate recent news events and pop culture phenomena into episodes. This rapid response capability has allowed Family Guy to remain culturally relevant across multiple decades, but it also creates significant production challenges that require careful coordination between writing, animation, and broadcast scheduling. The show's musical parodies and elaborate musical sequences often involve complex licensing negotiations and legal considerations. When Family Guy parodies specific songs or musical styles, the production team must navigate copyright laws while creating content that's clearly transformative enough to qualify for fair use protection. Some of the show's most memorable musical moments required months of legal work behind the scenes, demonstrating the complexity involved in creating seemingly simple comedic content. Family Guy's impact on voice acting as a profession has been substantial and lasting. The show's success has elevated voice acting from a relatively niche specialty to a more mainstream entertainment career path. Seth MacFarlane's multiple voice roles have inspired other actors to develop versatile vocal capabilities, and the show's ensemble cast approach has become a model for other animated series. Voice acting workshops and training programs now regularly reference Family Guy techniques and approaches. The show's digital presence and streaming availability have introduced Family Guy to entirely new generations of viewers who experience the series differently than original broadcast audiences. Binge-watching capabilities allow viewers to notice long-term character arcs and recurring jokes that might be missed during weekly viewing. Streaming platforms have also made international versions and extended cuts available to broader audiences, creating new ways to experience familiar content. Family Guy's influence on comedy writing extends beyond animation into live-action television and film. The show's rapid-fire reference style and willingness to break the fourth wall have influenced writers across multiple mediums. Comedy Central roasts, Saturday Night Live sketches, and even stand-up comedy routines now regularly employ techniques that were pioneered or popularized by Family Guy writers. The show's approach to holiday episodes and special events demonstrates sophisticated audience engagement strategies. Family Guy's Christmas, Halloween, and other holiday episodes often feature elaborate production values and guest stars, creating appointment television that generates significant viewer loyalty. These special episodes frequently become fan favorites that get rewatched annually, contributing to the show's lasting cultural presence. As we reach the end of our journey through these fascinating Family Guy facts, it's clear that this seemingly simple animated series contains layers of complexity, creativity, and cultural influence that most viewers never fully appreciate. From Seth MacFarlane's one-man vocal circus to the show's groundbreaking approach to adult animation, Family Guy has carved out a unique space in television history that continues to evolve and surprise audiences. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone just discovering the series, these behind-the-scenes insights reveal the incredible amount of talent, dedication, and creative risk-taking that goes into every episode. The show's ability to remain relevant and controversial after more than 2 decades speaks to its creators' understanding of comedy, culture, and the ever-changing landscape of entertainment. So the next time you're settling in for a Family Guy marathon, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon about a dysfunctional family in Rhode Island. You're experiencing the result of thousands of hours of creative work by some of the most talented people in entertainment, all coming together to create something that's simultaneously ridiculous and profound, offensive and heartwarming, simple and incredibly sophisticated. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere out there, Seth MacFarlane is probably already working on the next episode that will surprise, delight, and possibly outrage audiences all over again. That's the magic of Family Guy. And that's what makes it truly special in the vast landscape of television entertainment.